7, otherwise known as the Daigo parry, otherwise known as the Mona Lisa of fighting game moments. You probably have seen or heard about this moment, even if the idea of a fighting game combo sends you into a panic attack. This moment only came to be because of 4 little letters, SBMM. And despite these 4 letters blessing mankind with a 15 perfect parry consecutive masterpiece, developers are using them to erode the idea of casual gaming. Connection-based matchmaking is the most prehistoric matchmaking type. Back when Call of Duty only had single-digit sequels and Bungie was a startup company developing a little indie game called Halo, if you wanted to play with your friends, you had to hike your ass across the street and pray to God you did not get the broken third-party controller. Today, CBMM means that a game's online multiplayer will try to match you with players who have the least likely chance of an opponent learning Goku's instant transmission midway through the match through the power of 7 megabyte internet. In contrast, SBMM, or skill-based matchmaking, will try to pair you with players who have the least likely chance of embarrassing you and stomping you so hard you wonder if you can still get that refund from the PlayStation Store. Both systems in most modern games will borrow from each other's homework, yeah, a little bit, but the difference is what's most important to them, connection quality or skill. The debate between which of these two types is so divisive that people might as well treat them like a political party. SBMM supporters will say it's unfair that inexperienced players have to fight what is the equivalent of Daigo for their game, while CBMM supporters will say it's unfair that players have to fight SCP-173 because of bad internet. SBMM supporters are okay with waiting for longer but more fair matches, whereas CBMM players want to find a match and play a game ASAP. SBMM says closely competitive matches are more fun. CBMM says that letting players play and perform better if they are better players is more fun. Back and forth they bickered like an old married couple. The problem is that each side is equally right and equally subjective. Instead, I will be ignoring these points and I will talk about 5 reasons why SBMM is objectively bad. Quite a bold claim coming from some random internet dude with less subscribers than the concurrent player base of a dead game, but hear me out. If it's one thing I am good at, it's video games, and good God have I played a lot of them. I have so many Virgin points saved up, my next game at my checkout is free. Anyways, there are issues with SBMM that philosophically and practically you won't see unless you actually play as much as I have. By the way, I want to make it clear that both CBMM and SBMM have their place. I wouldn't want Daigo fighting some random dude from the audience just because he was closer. If you queue for a competitive match, it should be SBMM. What I am targeting here is that this relatively new idea and this new trend to stick SBMM into every single casual matchmaking hole it can find itself in. Right, sorry. Issue number 1 is perhaps the most on the nose, but we might as well get that out of the way. The system gets it wrong sometimes. If you have played any game competitively for more than a dozen times, you have undoubtedly played a game where the matchmaker screwed up so hard one of the teams just feels bad for the other. These games are so lopsided you almost feel bad for essentially role-playing Anakin Skywalker versus the younglings. Or maybe you were on the receiving end of this and your only strategy was to lie down, place your hands above your head, and kiss your ass goodbye. We have come to accept glitches in the Matrix like these as part of the experience, but for the sake of objectivity and impartiality, we have to be critical of these failures as evidence that skill-based matchmaking doesn't always judge the skill portion correctly. Issue number 2 is perhaps the biggest personal gripe I have with SBMM, and that's the lack of casual games. Inherent to SBMM lobbies is the requirement of every player to play at their absolute best. This by itself is fine, but if the system is strict enough, it completely discourages silliness, experimentation, and growth. Perhaps I'm alone in this, but I think casual games should allow me to play casually. Let me play less optimally for the sake of landing that insane 720YY ladder style no scope that I was raised on Call of Duty montages from. That shit's fun as hell, but is it the correct way to play? In an SBMM lobby, absolutely not. Experimentation is like silliness, but it's silliness with a point. Casual games are supposed to be the test ground for anything and everything. Take a break from maining your best DPS character or your best loadout or your best exotic weapon to try something you might like more. SBMM puts a vice grip around the neck of experimenting players, choking any attempts that aren't the player's absolute best. Growth, I realize, is a bit of a hot take here, but why should I be bothered to play at my version of Olympic level if every future game is going to require just as much sweat from me? Heck, why separate casual and ranked if they're going to be the same damn experience? Oh, and if you're one of the types championing this frustration as a positive for our so-called sweaty try-hard veterans, what do you think happens when you yourself start winning more games? Might find yourself in someone else's shoes. At least in CBMM, I can tell when I'm getting better, because usually I can find myself winning more often rather than being stuck in this algorithmically designed hamster wheel of a 50-50 win-loss ratio. Hell, why bothering improving at all if the rewards don't scale with you either? If it's the same level of FXP, the same loot drops, the same win screen, if I'm a top 99% player or a top 1% player, why would I bother? Right, I'm sorry, I'm trying to stay focused. Issue number 3 has to do with friends. In other words, those things I don't have. Let's assume by some miracle you make it to the top 10% of all players globally. SBMM is matching you with players of similar caliber, but you love it. You love it so much that you tell your friend about it, and she decides she's going to get the game to play it with you, only to find that she spends more time on the respawn screen whenever she plays with you. SBMM systems have to make one of 3 judgment calls when they're matching a player with a large skill separation from their friend. They either A, throw the team into the veteran skill bracket, screwing over the new player, B, throws the team into the new player's bracket, screwing over the enemy team, but much to the joy of the veteran player, or C, throws the team into some average of the 2-player skill bracket. The last system is of course preferred, but it's not in perfect compromise. The new player still might not be able to keep up, while the skilled player is likely cutting down enemies while muttering, "Remember, no Russian," under their breath. In any case, SBMM discourages skill differences among friends. At least in a CBMM lobby, you have a chance of getting a lobby with at least one other player of your skill type. I feel like I haven't told a joke in a while, so here's Halo Infinite's concurrent player count, and here's Farming Simulator's concurrent player count. Moving on! Issue 4 is the lack of competitive game modes for SBMM games. Most casual game modes are designed to be chaotic and fun, whether it's like items in Smash, the number of players in a Destiny lobby, or the game rules themselves. These games are shorter and sprinkled in with just a tad of randomness. This randomness can allow for upsets between skill brackets, generally making the game more replayable. This can be as straightforward as just lucking into a Smash ball, or more subtle, like an unlucky spawn. These little moments of unpredictability are what keeps game modes like these fun and casual, but they also can be infuriating to lose against. If your casual game mode is skill-based match made, losing to something outside of your control is disheartening and frustrating. The better the player is, the more they can control these moments of RNG, but unfortunately, that also means the better the player is, the more they can optimize the luck when they do get it. This has the effect of sometimes allowing games to be won by sheer luck alone and obscuring the player's skill, of which the matchmaker is pushing so hard for. The last issue with SBMM is what I call the filter of BS. Janky game code can be funny or at least annoying in a casual game, but as soon as it becomes too frequent, jank becomes the wet socks and the warm pillows of matches. Now, this wouldn't be a problem if your game was perfect, but unless your game can be represented by the acronym TF2, I won't hold my breath. It can be absolutely defeating to lose a really tight game just because of the game failing to work properly. The filter of BS can also be meta imbalances. Meta, aka most effective tactics available, will get old real fast in SBMM lobbies. As long as the video game has been around, there have been 11-year-olds complaining about weapons being unfair while using them themselves. Unfortunately, there is a skill of knowing and using the meta. SBMM lobbies are filled to the gills with players running their absolute best gear because they have been tricked into thinking that success is the goal instead of having fun. If SBMM is so hated by veteran players like myself, why does every major multiplayer game seem to be implementing it into both casual and ranked modes alike? Optimistically, the reason for its prevalence is to protect new players from being squished. Pessimistically and likely realistically, I would argue it's because game companies have probably found it's better at generating revenue. Long-time players who aren't paying you for some type of monthly subscription to keep playing will likely keep playing the game even if it's less enjoyable, while newer players have little reason to stick around and to keep going at it if they keep getting the LeBron James of Call of Duty. As the discussion on this topic has continued, however, so has the awareness and the disdain towards SBMM systems. More players are realizing they are chasing a carrot on the end of an infinitely longer and longer stick. Despite the last
10 minutes and 25 seconds
of me griping about SBMM, it can be used for a good reason. Here is my proposition to the -1 AAA FPS developers watching this. Make SBMM enabled on casual modes by default for the first 5 hours. This doesn't mean you have to stick new players with only other new players. If a lobby's general skill rating or average skill rating is close to the skill rating of your new player, put them in it. After those 5 hours, randomly flip-flop SBMM and CBMM, mostly favoring CBMM. Hopefully my veteran players out there aren't too upset of having to play one sweaty game every 5 matches, while likewise the less skilled players will have moments of relief from those more high-end lobbies. Alternatively, the probably preferable method is just to give players a good reason to play ranked lobbies with more intense in-game rewards and SBMM, rather than just arbitrarily flipping a switch into how hard I'm supposed to play. Anyways, judging by every poll I have ever seen about SBMM, at least 40% of you disagree with everything I just said. That's fine, I guess. As long as you can give me a good reason why in the comments, I won't send the ghost with a whapping stick after you.